And we are live. Welcome back, everybody. This guest, Mr. Steve Harden, is in the house, and we're going to be bringing some big time energy. But I got to start this, not just introducing Steve as a new best-selling author of Surpass Your Limits, but as a guy who has absolutely been someone I've looked up to over the years. And I want to tell you why. And then we're going to dig into this because this is a hell of a story. When I was in college, I was at USC, and me and a buddy of mine invited Steve to come out and be on the panel for a sports business association. He was so giving. He was working at Oakley at the time, so giving, came out, just blew our minds. Such a nice guy, gave us so much time, so much advice, totally helped our careers. Okay, and this is when I didn't even know where I was going with this and I wanted to be in sports. We ended up becoming kind of friends over the years. He kept giving me advice. We stayed in touch. And eventually, as Steve kept growing, we ended up working on the book together. Now you have a best-selling book called Surpass Your Limits. We're friends, and you're changing so many people's lives in the world of career development and navigating corporate life. So Steve, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you, Jake. It is 100% my pleasure. And I remember all the stories you just talked about like it was yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I still have the glasses from our experience when I came out and did a tour at Oakley. Like every time I put them on, I think of you. So for everyone that's listening, that's the type of guy Steve is. And you're going to see that when we talk about his book and his experience. So Steve, why Surpass Your Limits? Why decide to write this book? You've had a huge career. Walk us through just some of the key points of what you've done in your career and then why you decided to write Surpass Your Limits.
I know you'll laugh at this, Jake, and I hope your audience laughs at this, but in my career, I think it's chapter 4, chapter 5, and it talks about living through poor leadership. And throughout my career, I've had 13 people that I've reported to at the VP, senior VP, president, CEO level. And I'm sad to say 10 of those 13 were terrible, 2 were okay, and 1 was exceptional. Do the math. That's a really small percentage. And I've always tried to saddle up with my team, be a partner with them, not just push, pull, push, collaborate. And I had this book in the back of my brain. Even before you and I met, I had this idea that I was going to write a book that was going to open up brains and eyes and minds and horizons. And when I met with you, probably what was it now, 6 or 7 months ago, the light bulb just went off. And meeting with Adrian, creating the outline, all your team, I've been blown away. I literally have shared your story, my story with you, with 35, 36 different people. And it's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And fun.
Yeah. And it's been fun. I mean, and you've been great to work with. So talk to us. Okay. Surpass Your Limits. You've had a variety of different people you report to. Okay. What is Surpass Your Limits all about?
Well, I think for sure, without a doubt, we all have our own mental limitations, our own personal limitations. And I have probably been my own personal worst adventure or thinker. I would think of myself, I didn't go to USC. I went to some small junior college and I didn't, I was an aspiring athlete, but I had imposter syndrome pretty strong. But then as I saddled up to these people that had MBAs from Berkeley or Stanford, or you fill in the blank, I was as intelligent, as driven, and as successful as them. I'm going, wow, if I can do that, I should write a book. I should share this insights with other people. And that was really the genesis of Surpass Your Limits. The name came from, I was invited as part of, when I was at Adidas, part of this leadership group. We went to Germany, and it was this Dr. Warkowski was the guy's name, but he facilitated a 3.5-day meeting. And one of the phrases he used was surpass, with emphasis on your limits. And that spoke to me like a lightning rod. I think that I was limiting myself. And that's why that the phrase surpass your limits always stuck with me. And I've tried to write it as, I remember our very first meeting, who are you writing to, Steve? And it was I've got 3 children, but I've got a younger daughter and a son that are both in the business world as aspiring. And it was like you sharing, Steve, write the book like you're writing it to your kids. And the ideas just flooded my brain. And I would write for 2 days and I'd edit back and forth, but it was all about surpassing your limits. Whatever limits you happen to have, the book will help you address them. And that was my mindset.
Yeah. Now I want to paint a picture too for everybody. And you're a humble guy. All right. Like you're very humble and you've accomplished a lot. Can you share some of the places that you've worked, some of the roles that you've had? Because I want people to understand here that you wrote this book from a place of experience, a place of you've been there, you've seen it all, you've navigated over decades of experience at the highest level. So can you just share some of your past roles that you've had and some of the companies and people that you've worked with so that we can really start to dig into how we can navigate a career adventure?
Certainly. My career started in sales right out of college with GlaxoSmithKline, selling over-the-counter drugs to drugstores, grocery stores, and to doctors. And while it paid the bills, it wasn't my passion. As a former athlete, and when I got the call from the recruiter at Adidas, it was like, that was my golden ticket. Like and I can do something that I'm really passionate about. I will share very openly. I've always had leaders that pushed really hard. We have shareholders, we have our targets, financial targets, our profit and loss, and it was push, push, push. And while I can push with the best of them, that's not my DNA. My DNA is to saddle up side by side. I think it's in the back third of the book. I talk about taking this paradigm where if you think of packaged goods companies like Adidas, you've got your leadership team sitting way off to the side. You got the product team that creates the product. You got the marketing team that tells the story, and you got the sales team. And everything's always pointed towards sales. So if we didn't meet a target, it was always, well, sales didn't push hard enough, or sales didn't meet with enough people. And sales would say, well, marketing didn't give us the right story. And marketing would say, well, product didn't give us the right product. All wrong. So I take that paradigm that's more of a pyramid, product, marketing, sales, and flip it 90 degrees so where the leadership piece is right in the middle. So I'm a big proponent of the CEO and the vice presidents saddling up with their peers on the marketing, product, and sales side and pushing at the same time in the same period. And I talk about that very specifically in the book. And that's been I hate to call it a superpower, but that's what set me apart from a lot of people was grabbing the CMO, chief marketing, chief merchandising officer, grabbing the CEO and going, guys, I understand you want 30% growth next year. That's only doable if we do the following things in order. And you get a lot of sideways looks like, well, that's ridiculous. And it's like, no, Mr. CMO, come ride with me at Dick's Sporting Goods. Come listen. I also use the term feel the heat. Get the executive, the leadership people that are really voting with their dollars and their mind, with the board. Get them close enough to the heat where they can feel the heat of the consumer or your customer, and then things really start to change. And that's what I powered myself in, is getting the leadership team close enough to the consumer, close enough to the people that make the final decision whether what they're going to buy or not buy. And then all of a sudden, magic happens. And that's the thing that I try to bring magic to everything I touch. How do we make it better? If you can do it in 10, can I do it in 7 or 8? If it's going to take me 13, this is what I need to get it to 10. And I think keeping an open mind and saddling up with your team at all levels and working with them, not push.
Mm.
That's
when people are in their career, right? Because you've gone from the beginning in the sales to running big divisions, departments, companies at the highest level. Do you think it's more about, as you're on the up and up, is it more about paying your dues? Is it more about taking the advantageous risk? Is it more about building relationships with the higher ups? What have you found to be the things that allow people to go from the entry level position through the ranks while also not just giving them everything about themselves to that one company?
Great question. The simple answer is all of the above. But I break it down into 2 thoughts. When I travel to London, when you step off the subway, there's always that little sign that says "Mind the gap." That's the gap between the subway and the platform, right? And I extended that phrase to thrive in the gap. So in corporate speak, there's always going to be gaps. I'm sales, your marketing, your product. The gaps exist between those 2 different departments. And one of my big superpowers is how do we play in the gap? Be mindful of the gap, but then how do you play? And how do you thrive? And that is by grabbing your counterpart with you're a director or a VP, grabbing your counterpart and letting them see and feel what you're experiencing, and then also be willing to feel and experience what they're experiencing. And I know it sounds easy. So my phrase is, it sounds simple, but it's not easy. It takes time to create those relationships. And I happen to be a man of faith. And one of the things that I try to do is not use the F word. I've had a lot of bosses that were F this, F that, F that. And I use the F word, but my F word is fun. How do we gamify? How do we take a big, hairy situation and turn it fun? Because at the end of the day, if you choose you don't want to do business with me or my brand, I'm okay. I want to be a service to you. And I think all too often, people at the higher ranks of corporations, it's just push. It's the almighty dollar. Push. We got to get that next close. We got to get that next whatever. And keeping in mind, that's very, very important. I get that. But there's a way to do it and a way not to do it. And I choose to saddle up, partner with my team, and really learn and feel. I think Walt Whitman said it originally, but Ted Lasso modernized it. Be curious, not judgmental. And I try to live by that mantra. I really, really do. And but by the way, I tried to live it that way before Ted Lasso.
Yeah. By the way, great show.
Oh my
Great
God.
show. Like for guys like us, big, positive, fun guys, like Ted Lasso just lived every dream, positive, upbeat, turning it around, sports. I mean, it had it all. So Steve, talk to me about this, okay? Because you can help a lot of people, okay? And in this book, you have different avenues of ways that you teach people and how you help them navigate through their corporate life and how they can actually thrive in that. If you're talking to somebody, I'm going to ask this in two parts. If you're talking to somebody who's in the beginning stages of their career, maybe it's their first job, maybe it's their first 5 years, they're trying to get that first or second promotion. What piece of advice would you give to them to help them advance in a way that makes sense for their limits?
Two quick thoughts. When you have a thought, condense it to fewer words, economize the words. I think a lot of people, and I'm guilty of this, I'll use 10 words when 3 would suffice. Force yourself to use 3, 4, 5 words versus paragraphs, right? And number 2, always be the first one to raise your hand. A lot of times in corporate, people are, when the big hairy goal is out there, people tend to lean back and start watching where are the hands being raised, who's and be the first one. And I think you've heard the term fail fast. I would much rather accept a responsibility or a big hairy goal and fail quickly than string it out. And then 6 months later, we're going, we haven't moved anywhere. Well, let's try different things. Colin Powell, one of the great generals of our Army, said it best. I will go if I have 60 to 75% of the knowledge that I need, the data that I need, I'm going. Because if you wait around for 90, 95, 100%, opportunities are going to pass you by. I'd rather get in the game, test the water, A/B test it back and forth much quicker. So that's a long answer. Too many people lean back and wait to see what's going on. No, dive in, offer, and then communicate like your life depended upon it, good and bad. Oftentimes people only want to share good news, like, hey, the goal was 10 and I got 12. Great, high five. Okay, but what did you learn? What can we apply for the next season? And I think a lot of people only want to talk about the positives. And I think it's equally important to talk about what didn't work and why didn't it work. Very critical. And a lot of people don't want to look at that until it's an abject failure. And then it's like, now let's look at the failures. No. Even when you're winning, let's look at what we can do.
Yeah. And then the second part to this is, let's take somebody who's been very successful in corporate, right? And they're looking to enter that VP role. Maybe they're looking to even branch off. Maybe they're looking to get their like big promotion that they've been waiting in line for the last 5 or 10 years, right? What piece of advice do you have for somebody at that level so that they can achieve their highest performance of success?
One of the things that I think a lot of people forget, they work for a brand, whether it's Adidas or Oakley or Nike, big B, big brand. You got to think little b. You got to think, what's my personal brand story? Because I guarantee you, even when people are not talking about the big brand, they're talking about the little brand. And my team is this, my team is that. Jake does that, Steve does this. I think being very mindful, what is my personal brand? What do I stand for? When I'm not in the room, what are people saying and thinking about me, my brand? And I want them, again, I'm not trying to be Pollyanna, but I want people to say, Steve's a hard worker. Steve's very smart. Steve's not willing, is willing to tackle anything. He's not afraid to fail. He's not afraid to share his failures, because little failures turn into big wins if you do it consistently, right? And I think in corporate America, especially, people would rather, again, lean back and point fingers at Jake's not doing this or Steve's not doing that, versus let's go, team. Let's get it on. Let's go forward. I'm a big proponent of not being afraid of what people are going to say, but being very mindful of what my personal brand is, and being authentic and consistent. Consistency, I think, is the most important thing, because throughout my career, people have always said things like, Steve, are you always this positive?
Mm.
Yeah. Even when I'm up against a big, hairy zero, I'm not getting what I want, I will go back to the customer and in a very friendly way, try to learn more. And if somebody ultimately slams the door on me, I'm going to say, can I just have one more question? You know, and the question would be, is there somebody else in the building, in the business, that I can talk to? Is there somebody else? Always trying to learn what's holding me back, what's holding the brand back. I think people have to be very aware of the personal brand they're putting out there. And I have a chapter about building your personal brand in the book too. I think it's mission critical.
Yeah. And you know, again, when we met, it was based on the brand and the willingness you were to help, right? You weren't going to necessarily get anything out of coming to speak to a bunch of younger kids who are in college, but you had a lasting impact on several of us there. There were relationships that became developed. There were opportunities there. You never know who you're going to meet until you know, right?
So
and you
true.
never know what someone's going to do in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, or decades, right? And that's something that we sometimes forget about in a world that's so much about instant gratification, right? Instant results. Did I get the benefit, the result from this interaction, and was it worth it? And sometimes it's important to analyze those immediate decisions and actions.
Absolutely.
But it's also very important to say, well, did this get me closer to where I want to be or who I want to be? And that can sometimes make decisions a little bit different.
Absolutely. I'm always thinking I want to get instant gratification, because that's the sales and marketing cycle that we all live under. But I'm also mindful of sowing seeds for next season, next quarter, next year. I always try to set myself up for success, and nobody knows my personal story. One of the adages I use a lot is, when we look at other people, we see their highlight reel, and when we look at ourselves, we see our blooper reel. And I think people have got to get out of that mindset to say, I mean, I know where I'm deficient, but I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on where I'm really good and work on that personal branding. And I think it's cool to share that with your superior.
Yeah.
Because and then Mr. Boss, hold me accountable. You know, if I slip and fall, let me know when I do that. I mean, I would hope that if I'm candid with my upline manager, that they'll be just as nice when they point out my failures. Or, hey, Steve, you could do a little bit. Hey, Steve, you did this and that. Do a little more of this and a little bit less of that. Oh, I can do that. And that's what I try to give to, is humble leadership. Look, I'm going to be on the front lines with you. And that's the key. When I talked about my 10 leaders that were abject failures, those were guys that stood at the top and push, never, ever wanted to know what or how or why the decisions were being made at retail, or what kind of the obstacles we were up against. They didn't want to hear it. But that's the whole holistic picture. You got to be willing to listen to it and learn from it. And too many people, they just march to the quarterly P&L and to the shareholders. And again, don't miss my words. That's super important. But I think the people are way, way more important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've found in my career that to be very true, is no matter what objective we have, and this could be small business, big business, it could be dollar sign, it could be amount of clients, it could be creating new product, enhancing customer experience, I mean, it could be related to anything. What I have found is that the people can always surprise you with more if you allow them and give them the chance to, through the open communication, raw feedback, and inspiration to give them the chance, versus just holding them back in a way before they even had a chance to try, right? And I,
That's
I,
true.
I so agree with that. And I think of many instances, whether it's been through my life as running the professional basketball combine
Right.
or as a speaker or running Big Idea to Bestseller, like when people feel empowered, when people feel that they have certain ownership, and that doesn't mean you just say, oh, you go for it. But when they have ownership and they know that they can come to you with their challenges, with their strengths, with their weaknesses, whatever, there's an opportunity for them to be even higher of a success than they even
Absolutely.
thought themselves. Right.
100%. So true.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Well, Steve Jobs said it best. If I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room, right?
Yeah.
I think there's too many leaders out there that literally think of themselves as the smartest person in the brand. And admittedly, they're probably very smart. That's how they got to that level. But there are people. I'll use social media as an example. I'm of the age where I'm reasonably social, but I know that I know 1, 2, 5, maybe 10% of what somebody that is middle 20s, early 30s, that they're native to that. I'm foreign to that. I'm learning, but I have to lean on people that, and I'm not a product designer. I have a really good product but I'm going to let the product designers do their deal. And again,
Mhm.
letting people do their jobs.
Yeah.
And I've also found that if you give them the space, you set the goal, the target, and we all collaborate, we're all transparent. 9 times out of 10, they're going to knock it out of the park. Where maybe you'd have settled for a 7 or 8 and they get a 12. It's like, damn, that was really good. And I
Yeah.
think people love doing that. And
Yeah. I
something
agree.
else, and this is kind of off topic, I think it's also important because we've all had teams. I've had teams of 20 people and I've had teams of 500 people. There's always a little cancer somewhere in there that is the person that is whoa, the Eeyore that, oh, it can't be done, it can't be done. I hate to say it, but it's really important that you spend time with those people to either upgrade them or to get them out. That's mission critical. And I'm not
Mhm.
trying to be, oh my gosh, it's only my way. It's like the whole team. And anyway, I've seen such situations where one person can drag down a division or a company just because of their negative, it
Yeah.
can't be done mindset. And that's
So
worth
let's
spending
talk
time.
about your mindset when it comes to the book, right?
Okay.
Because you had, as you mentioned earlier, you had an idea for a very, very long time, and you always knew it would be some point of your career. What were some of your big, let's use your word for the sake of this, some of your limitations or concerns when you first decided to commit to the book?
I've never been a good writer. I didn't go to a prestigious school, so I don't have my MBA. There's so many other people that are within the organization that are better educated or maybe smarter than me. And I'd never written anything beyond a college paper that was probably 6 to 8 pages long. And I'm looking at maybe doing something that's 150, 200 pages. Oh, the mountain was just too high, right? And I'm gonna toot your horn a bit. You and your team made it very, very doable, like biting chunk or little bite chunks. Um, Somebody from your team recommended, I can't think of the name of it. Was it Bird by Bird? It was a book, but there
Something.
was an excerpt in there, and it was don't worry about the quality of your writing, just write it and write a little bit every day. And I found that as I was writing, my writing was getting better and better. I was self-editing, and it just your process made it. I don't want to make it sound simple, but it was much easier. It just got me over the mental hurdle. My big block was mental. I've never
Mhm.
done this, therefore I can't do it. So, and you meeting with you and your contagious attitude, meeting with Adrian and your whole team is like, wow, they made it very doable and
Yeah.
enjoyable.
Yeah. Hey, look, I appreciate you saying all these great things.
Seriously.
But but that's what it's all about, right? Is we want to make sure that you can overcome these initial hurdles, right? Like that's why we built our process. Was there any like breakthrough moments or turning points when you were like, this is good, or holy shit, it's actually about to happen, or this is bigger than I even thought it was going to be?
My big holy shit moment was when we completed the outline. So we talked 5 different times for an hour each, and we created an outline. And then it's like, Steve, just write chapter 1. And remember, we're going to edit this thing 4 or 5 times. So just get it on paper, just type it out there. And creating the outline and telling the story 3 and 4 times, I saw, what's the word I'm looking for? The system. I just saw it evolving. It's like, oh, I can do this. This is very doable. So you took that big, hairy thing that I can't do, we broke it into bite-sized pieces with an outline that was that overarching, like, here's whenever I got stuck again, as I'm writing, I'd go back to the outline and go, oh, that piece, and insert that again. And then as I started writing more and more chapters, I got to chapter 10. And then I started thinking, well, I think chapter 6 would be better up here and chapter 2 down here. And then it just became my life. And I would share pieces. My daughter happens to be an English major, and she would read the first 3 chapters. She said, Dad, I love the content, but it's all convoluted. You need this, this, and this. And meeting with Adrian, same thing. And then it just became, okay, I got this now. I had so many aha moments, Jake. After I committed to doing it, I sat on it for a month and a half and didn't really do much, hardly anything. And then when I found the time, made the time, it just flooded. I would wake up some mornings at 3 o'clock in the morning with the intention of writing like an opening paragraph, and I'd write 2.5 chapters.
Yeah.
I go back and rewrite that, with using different words and things, but it became fun. And my wife would wake up at 6:30 or 7 going, how long have you been awake? 3 hours. I'd still be sitting at my desk 3 hours later, and she goes, how's it going? I said, I'm really getting some breakthroughs. And probably when I got to about chapter 8 or 9, I'm going to pat myself on the back, I felt as though I had made it. Still not done, but it's like, damn, I've got ideas for book 2 and 3 and 4. I think this is contagious in me. And then chapters 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 just came fast. And everybody I talked to, you've shared this a little bit with your social media. It's when you start telling people about your book, everybody wants to know about it. And they're hyper impressed. Like, oh my God, I could never write a book. They are where I was 7 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, because they don't even have an outline or anything. And it's like, yeah, they're just so impressed, which makes me puff out my chest a little bit. And like, yes, I am a best-selling author.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are few things that I have found to be true more than who you become when you write this book, and the identity that you start to assume, and the way people support authors for their first book or their second book. It's always so powerful.
Yeah.
Right? Because people you haven't talked to in 5, 10, 15, 20 years are like, you just wrote a book? Oh my gosh, that's amazing, right? And so I want to hear a little bit more about this. Talk to me. When you got ready to actually release this book and launch this book, what were some of the wins that you had? What were some of the ways people started to approach you? What were some of these awesome experiences that came from when the book actually became live?
I mean, I launched it on both Instagram, Facebook, but the biggest one for me was LinkedIn. Being a business guy, that was a natural portfolio. So I followed the formula: day 7, day 6, day 5. And with each post, it would go from 32 likes and 10 comments to 64 likes and 18 comments. And it just grew and grew and grew. And then when I launched 2 weeks ago today, it launched, and people would either get their ebook or their paperback version. And they're like going, Steve, this is real. I had dinner with a guy here in Indianapolis last night, and he read the whole book, and he says, Stevie says, it's a real book. I mean, you have some good shit in there. I mean, it's like, I'm going to buy 10 copies for my team. It's that good. And then his one question was, and I may go back and make an edit, in my thank yous, I listed my wife as my supreme supporter, and then my grandchildren. They said, but you have 3 kids. You didn't mention your kids. So I may include my kids. Jake, I know this is going to sound oversimplified, but I just thoroughly enjoyed the whole process. It was work, but it was fun. And again, getting over the big, hairy mental block of, I'm not a writer. I've never done this. I felt turbocharged halfway through, and it's like, this is too crazy. But back to your question, the feedback. In fact, I got a message today from our Chief Human Resources Officer at KSGB Brands. She knew that I'd written the book. She sent me a text message and said, see, I got your book yesterday. I started reading it at 10 o'clock last night, not like a week ago, but like last night. She says, I have now finished it. Holy crap, Steve, this is good. Oh my God. And then she immediately goes online and writes an Amazon review. And she's the chief human resources officer. She's worked with brands like Adidas, like Nike. I mean, and she has access to all that. And best business book I've ever read. She says, admittedly, I don't think I've ever finished a business book. I've read hundreds of them, pieces and parts. I've never finished, and I finished your book. Wow, Steve. And just that type of accolade have come my way. I've not monetized it yet, but it's been 2 weeks. But I had two consulting calls this morning, one at 9 o'clock and one at 11 o'clock, that I'm feeling very good that they will become clients of Steve Harden. And as a result of Surpass Your Limits.
Love it.
You'll laugh at this one. So this guy, master movers out of the UK, Derbyshire, England, somehow the algorithms were in my favor and it popped into his feed on LinkedIn. And he watched my video, and some of the things I said, he said this morning, and I quote, Steve, you said a few things that I told my partner like 4 days ago. Holy crap. So we got to get connected. So we scheduled a meeting. We had our Zoom call this morning. I'm just intrigued. This is Derbyshire, England. You know, how in the world did somebody on LinkedIn saw my video, saw my post, got my book, and we're talking the same language. That was, I want to say humbling, but it was also unbelievably exhilarating. It's like, I'm on the call with this guy going, even if we don't sign a deal, this is cool stuff.
It's so fun because that just, look, like you said, your book came out 2 weeks ago. This is like all happened in 2 weeks. Imagine what's going to happen in 2 months, in 2 years, in 2 decades on the back end of this. I mean, the possibilities are limitless. Okay. So, I mean, the early praise is through the roof. The book is getting great reviews. How do we get the book? How do we work with you to advance our career? How do we bring you in to speak to our teams? Tell us how we can learn more about working with Steve Harden.
Thank you very much, Jake. In the preface of the book and at the very end, I make it actually, and in the middle, I make an offer that if the book has moved you enough, I would give you a complimentary career assessment or career boost, something to take some of the elements of Surpass Your Limits, and I'll infuse it in you on a personal level. Now, admittedly, that in hopes that it would be a longer term monetized situation, but my goal is I want to help people. I'll tell you one other thing that's happened. I don't know if I've shared this with you, Jake, but I've been invited to be an adjunct professor at Azusa Pacific University for the fall. And I'm intrigued. I'm teaching a class on reputation management and brand management. And the dean of the business school said, Steve, and she got a copy of my book. She says, Steve, please make your book part of the required reading. And which, of course, made me feel fantastic. That, and my daughter, she says, Dad, what you ought to do is get your book. I bought 100 copies, and she said you should autograph all of them with a note and send it out to deans of business schools that you want to speak at. And great idea. And I will start that next week. And so it's little baby steps, right? That I think is, I'm blown away with the amount of praise, respect, and surprise. The CHRO from K-Swiss Global Brands, one word that she used was, I'm so proud of you, Steve. It just warms my soul. And my hope is that I give back. The people that pick up the book, that read it, can pick out a nugget or 2 or 3. And I truly, I've put my phone number in the book. I hope people call me. I hope people email me. I truly want to give back. And as a byproduct of that, if I'm able to monetize it, high five. That would be great. But I truly, like you talked about me coming to speak at USC, I was honored that you asked me to speak. But that's been a very pivotal time in my career to be able to say, yeah, I spoke at USC. And people were like blown away with that. That's turned into speaking at Pepperdine and Azusa Pacific, Cal Lutheran. People want to hear my story. And while I sell myself a little bit short with my humbleness, when I share my story, people are like going, oh my God, tell me more. What? How did you do that? I was at I'm also part of the board of advisors for the School of Business at Azusa. So I'm surrounded by 19 PhDs. I don't have my PhD. And after the dinner, 11 of the PhDs literally were huddled around me. They wanted to hear my story. Again, no, I'm not trying to be negative with these PhDs, but they got their bachelor's degree, immediately followed by a master's degree, by a PhD, and they became an adjunct professor and then a full-time professor. They've been doing it for 19 years. Nowhere in there did they have any real life experience. These 11 PhDs came to me going, talk to me about Adidas, talk to me about Oakley, how is it out there? And that, it's fed my ego, but it's also better prepared me to be able to share my story with college students to say, you can do this. This is how I did it. And I'm open to questions and answers. So, and I'm going to have fun doing it.
I love it. I love it. I love it, you guys. This is Steve Harden. Make sure to get his book, Surpass Your Limit. Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, connecting, seeing you go through this process. And I couldn't be more grateful to see where you're at today and where this book's going to lead for all the amazing people you will get to continue to serve.
Thank you, Jake. It's been a pleasure and a lot of fun.
Awesome. Awesome. So everybody, make sure to go grab your copy of Surpass Your Limits. Go on Amazon, grab a copy. You can get the Kindle, the paperback book. Make sure to reach out to Steve if you want him to come speak to your organization, work with your team. I mean, this dude has done it all. But just like we finish every episode, we're going to finish with a challenge today. And a lot of these challenges sometimes are about reflection. And so today's going to be a reflection question. It's going to be this. Ask yourself, what is one limitation that I have put on myself in my career? I want you to first become aware of it. And then I want you to ask yourself, what can I do to overcome that limitation? Okay. What is the limitation you currently find yourself constantly thinking about? And then what can you do today to get closer to surpassing that limit? Wow. And I would encourage you to get Steve's book, Surpass Your Limits, to make that happen. But folks, this has been a great episode. I will see you on the next one. Peace.